Yeah. Narrate. Jordan Bean.
Come and have a good time.
Lean marketing for SaaS.
I typically, my first question is always to ask my guest this, to tell the story of how we met. And it's relevant because there's a podcast connection here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I first saw you, Jordan, on Matt Wallach's podcast, and you were talking about lean marketing for SaaS companies, you know, how you could start from scratch, do some marketing on a new product and open the doors you need opened. And that's exactly the message that I needed to hear at the time. So I reached out to you and we worked together on an ebook and some outreach strategies, and the rest is history. I mean, we, like so many people that I meet, really enjoyed working with you. And, you know, we had kind of a LinkedIn friendship after that. And I'm so glad we've stayed in touch. So thanks for having me today.
And I messed up because I typically do at least introduce my guest and say, this is Andrew Phelps, the CEO of Incentive Pilot. And we are going to talk about Incentive Pilot as we go through the episode. But first, let's dig into your background a little bit. How did you come to found Incentive Pilot?
Yeah, so I'm a designer by trade, UX designer, and ran a UX studio called User 10 for about 10 years. And the vision for User 10 was always to do agency work, learn about building products, and use the agency to identify productization opportunities. And, you know, we explored a lot of different things, but that vision really came to fruition with Incentive Pilot. We were hired to build some channel marketing apps for Dell that let their channel sales folks take trainings, earn points, get prizes, all your kind of standard incentive program stuff. When we were running the analytics for our first campaign, the Dell people were over the moon. They had engaged more people than they had ever engaged before with a campaign or an app like that they had built. And so that was a light bulb moment for us because it was our first shot. Really, all we were doing was you know, building in marketing and UX best practices into the experience for their channel sellers. And we knew that if we had gotten that much engagement on our first try, there was just a huge opportunity to build a product that could make it easy for, you know, companies, big enterprise companies especially, to engage their massive audiences of sellers to, you know, drive those results. So we started building Incentive Pilot on the side and licensed it to some early customers. And for a couple years, we ran both the agency and Incentive Pilot. And then about 2 years ago, we had completely replaced the agency revenue with software revenue. And so we decided to fully focus on Incentive Pilot and building a SaaS company.
Mm-hmm. And so one would assume that those two lives are somewhat different, running an agency and then now, you know, growing a SaaS. What was the transition like? And what was the moment, I guess, where you decided to go all in?
Yeah, so I mean, the transition's difficult. You have two models that are basically opposite, right? When you're running an agency, all of, you know, the value you're going to get from the business is on the annual revenue you bring in, and if you're going to make your money while you're running the business. And in a SaaS model, you can run it different ways, but the value of the business is going to be connected to your exit because the multiples are so much higher, right? A great agency multiple is like 2.5 to 3. A crappy SaaS multiple is 5, right? So it's just a different game, and understanding, you know, where the value of the business that you're going to collect as you run it or exit, you know, influences the decisions you make. And then, you know, we were a premium studio. We worked with really big brands. Projects were very big, you know, often 6 figures. So going from a single engagement being worth $100,000 to, you know, a single year being a tenth of that or less in software, it's a big shift in mindset and strategy and cash flow and how you do everything. So you have kind of two competing business philosophies trying to run at the same time. I think how we did it was keeping them very separate, understanding that they needed to be run differently. And the growing pains associated with that is that great agency people aren't necessarily great SaaS people, and the needs of the business are different. So along the way, we've had to let team members go, always trying to do right by them, and adapting to the needs of the different businesses. In terms of going all in, we wanted to make sure we got enough revenue and saw a clear path to this being a better opportunity long term. But I think a lot of the decision, it was emotional, and it's something left out of these conversations oftentimes, right? There is for me and for my partners, running an agency, and a lot of agency owners can relate to this. There are downsides to running an agency, and those things can weigh on you. So one of the great things about working at an agency is that you get to work with all sorts of people doing all sorts of different things, and you can learn from one customer and apply it to another customer, and it's really fascinating. And I love that aspect of working in an agency. One of the hardest things about running an agency or a service company is that you pour your heart and soul into work that once it's done, you don't have any control over. And so you see your customers take your work and fail to execute your vision, or see the bureaucracy of their company kind of destroy what you have created. And that's really tough. It's hard to pour your time and your effort, especially for people who deeply care, into the work, just to see it kind of fizzle out and think, okay, well, it paid the bills. Maybe we even made a lot of profit, but you don't get the fulfillment of seeing your work done. I think you also start to develop an itch of, well, if I was there, I would have executed it right? Or if I was there, I could have made this work. And so I think my partners and I developed an itch of like, let's put our money where our mouth is, we have this judgment of our customers. And when things go wrong, we think we could do it better. Let's do it. Like, can we actually do it better? Let's build this other company. So, there's the financial aspects of the decision. Some of it's just curiosity and excitement about doing something new. And then some of it is the challenge. Like, let's take this on. We've built a 7-figure design studio working with some of the biggest customers in the world. Can we build, a similar or more successful SaaS company? I'm not sure how my experience, could be woven into advice for other people, but that's just kind of been my journey. And I think those are the factors that contributed to the decision.
Right on. We're here today to talk about founder-led sales. You are the founder of the company, and also, that I'm aware of, at least, the primary salesperson.
Yep.
My first question about that is, how important is your LinkedIn's presence to those sales efforts?
It's really important. And it's important right now because of the LinkedIn outreach that we're doing. I think let me step back. I can tell you exactly why it's important for me, and I can tell you why it's important in different ways for other people. So I think there's a couple baseline things that everybody needs. One, and I do this when we're talking about product, when we're talking about customer success, when we're talking about anything. There are things that are boxes to check, right? When we're designing products, we call them checkbox features. They're features you have to have because people expect them, your competitors have them. They're not the true value of the product. And it's the same thing with LinkedIn, right? Your LinkedIn has to have a few boxes checked. You need to look like you're not going to scam people. You need to look like you're someone that people want to interact with. So someone who's easy to talk, at the minimum, easy to talk to or not a pain to talk to. And then I think that goes along with that, you're a real person. You're not just this profile of a person, right? Like, you're a person who enjoys their work, or at least finds fulfillment in their work, and you enjoy helping people, right? So it's about creating, a genuine representation of who you are, but one that leans into what people want to interact with. No one wants to be hard sold. Nobody wants to feel like they're being sold snake oil. Nobody wants to interact with, some crazy high performer that, works 80 hours a week and only drinks smoothies for food. Like, they want to talk to a real person, right? So I think checking the boxes of I'm a real person and I'm easy to talk to, or at least tolerable, are important things to have on your profile. The other thing I'll say about your profile is that that headline below your name, that is the most valuable real estate on LinkedIn by a factor of about 100. And in that description, you really need to say who you help, how you help them, and tease something that makes it interesting enough to stand out from the crowd. And I found that that is the most important thing by far, because when people are going through their feed and you pop up, then you post something that they find interesting. Well, who's this person? They might click, they might not. In those first few words that show up in the feed, they need to know who you are, what you do, and why they might want to click, right? So I think that headline, of establishing your positioning is by far the most important thing. Looping back to what I started with, why is LinkedIn important? It's having that profile. It's also, your ability to message people that you don't know, right? So you can't always find emails. You're finding prospects on LinkedIn. So the messaging is very important for us and our outreach and building our pipeline. In terms of content and posting, I think that is highly market and niche and company specific. If your targets are on LinkedIn and interacting on LinkedIn, then posting and content is incredibly important. If your prospects aren't on LinkedIn, or you have an audience that isn't that interactive, even if they are on LinkedIn, the value, I think, is for brand recognition. I can't tell you how many times that I'll jump on a call and someone will say, "Oh yeah, I've seen your stuff on LinkedIn." So it's helpful in building that trust. But in terms of sparking conversations out of the blue, that's highly market dependent and niche dependent in my experience. And we have virtually zero inbound from our ideal customer on LinkedIn. Our LinkedIn activities or our LinkedIn results are a result of outreach.
Okay. You mentioned the importance of that LinkedIn headline. Yours, among other things, says 1,000% ROI guaranteed. That is clearly a very, very compelling offer. And I want you to talk me through how that works, and I guess how you arrived at including that in the bio, and how important it is, I guess, to that those initial touch points with customers.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's surprisingly maybe not as powerful as you think. I think having a compelling offer where you as the provider take on the risk is the main purpose is to build confidence in your customers and prospects, right? So when we bring on a new customer, we'll run a pilot program, a campaign that usually runs about a quarter. And what we'll do is we'll take whatever they're trying to achieve with that campaign and establish some KPIs. So maybe it's new deals registered. Maybe it's something more abstract, like we need more partners to take this training. And we take those KPIs and we say, okay, what is it worth for you to have a partner take this training? And you can usually kind of look at the data and establish, well, it's worth $88 to us if a partner takes this training or whatever. So we establish those KPIs and we establish a date to review them. So oftentimes, especially in channel and especially with enterprise sales, your sales cycles are long. You get your partners to do all this work in 3 months. The deals and the revenue that come from that aren't going to come till 3 or 6 months later, right? So we'll set the date that's appropriate to, attribute the revenue or whatever the KPI is to the campaign. We'll review the numbers on that date, and if we don't achieve 1,000% ROI or 11x return on their initial investment, we return all their money. They don't pay a dime. And we've never had to refund it because that's how well our product works. So usually what happens is we start running the campaign, and the early signals of the higher engagement and the things getting done is so good that we just instantly get into, a longer agreement with our customers after that pilot campaign. But if in the case that doesn't work out, then, we'll be happy to return the money, because we want to be in business with people for the long term. And if we're not getting you that insane ROI that makes it a no-brainer to keep buying, then we know we can probably find more value and help a different customer more because we've done it over and over again.
That's That's excellent. And I was curious, like 1,000% ROI. Do people surely they have questions. I was going to ask, my next question was going to be about your sales process, but I'm going to reverse things a little bit. I think we owe it to our viewers and listeners to put Incentive Pilot into context a little bit. So tell me about how it works. How do you gamify partner engagement?
Well, we do it with games. So, gamification the word gamification has a lot of baggage, and most of the people are familiar with the idea of gamification as like earning points, badges, or leaderboards, kind of these low level game elements that can be added to things to make them slightly more compelling. And our thesis was it's not compelling enough, right? If I give you points for folding laundry or put a leaderboard for who empties the dishwasher, is anybody really going to enjoy those chores more? No, is the answer. And the same is true for work, right? If I have to take a training I don't want to take, if I'm doing kind of extra initiative stuff that my company or a partner company wants me to do, it has to be compelling enough to drive action. So we thought, why not take actual games and weave them into the experience? So instead of taking a training and earning 10 points, you take a training and you earn a poker card. Or instead of registering a deal and getting 100 points, you register a deal and you get a minute of playtime in, Space Invaders or something like that. And so we're adding layers of interest that kind of break the mold and get additional attention in these high competition channels for attention, right? Because if I'm a partner that sells one big computer company stuff, then I probably sell the other big computer company stuff too. And those companies are constantly fighting for my attention, and creating something that's interesting enough to get people to take action can be the kicker. So that's the simple version. You dive a little deeper, it's understanding how these people work. They're really stretched between multiple deals, thousands of products, in and out of different apps all day. They're working in 5 to 10 minute chunks at the most. And so our entire experience is designed to fit into their workflow, catch them at a good time, and get more things done. And most of the time, we end up doubling partner engagement with very specific things in partner portals or the other systems that our customers are trying to drive activity with.
Mm-hmm. So now let's dig into the sales process. I want to hear about your prospecting. How are you reaching customers initially? I can't remember if it was before we started recording. You told me about your sales cycles, etc. Take me through it. What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So we deal with companies that are, $250 million in revenue or more generally. And there's up to 100 billion and more. So there's a lot of bureaucracy with our customers. There's a lot of decision makers. There's a lot of conversations that need to happen. And they all have unique needs. You usually need to, fit into their processes, especially related to security, that sort of thing. That's just all kind of table stakes when you're dealing with customers of this size. The other thing is budget cycles. So, oftentimes they have kind of a use it or lose it type situation where people get a budget, they allocate that budget, and if they don't use it all, it gets taken away. People and the cycles are based on their financial year, right? So one customer might be getting their budget for 2025 right now. Another customer might not get it until April of next year. So adapting to those different things, all of that kind of combines into a standard sales cycle of at least, I don't know what the average is. The average is probably 6 months. We've certainly had deals that take a year. And then we've had some deals, if the pain is strong enough, that close virtually overnight. So there is a broad spectrum, but it is a lot about timing. And if it's about timing, that means that on average, it's going to take longer, right? Because if the time is right 8 months from now for one customer and it's right 2 months from now for the other customer, then, you're going to average out about 6 months. So about 6 months, from initial conversation to closing a deal and onboarding a customer, it's a long time. You need to fill the top of the funnel with a lot of people. And, And a lot changes, right? As a startup, a lot changes with our product and our results and how we're looking at things from the time I first talked to someone a year ago and signing them today, right? And that works in our favor, because it's always getting better. But it's interesting and something you have to be aware of. So in terms of getting conversations started, that is anything from networking at events and leaning on my existing network for introductions and keeping in touch with people that are influencers or have a lot of connections in our space. And then we've tried everything when it comes to marketing. We've done some demand generation with content and case studies and ebooks, and that has been certainly valuable in list building, but it's usually not enough to get the conversation started, because these giant companies are so big and everybody wants contracts. The competition to get in front of these people is really hard, and they're most management folks at these big companies, they're in Zoom calls like 8 hours a day. The last thing they want is to add another Zoom call with someone they don't know, someone who's going to sell them something. And as a small startup selling to giant companies, you have a lot of trust to earn in terms of building your reputation and understanding their problem and that sort of thing. So, the cold outreach we're doing, you had to shift completely from the idea of, hey, jump on a demo with me, to, hey, we're doing paid research. I would love your thoughts on our product, and offering to, jump on a call with me, answer some of my questions. I'll show you a 5-minute demo and ask you a couple questions about that. And then I'll give you a $250 gift card. And that has worked incredibly well. Positive reply rates through the roof. It shifts the entire conversation from, hey, let me sell you this, to, hey, I value your input and there's something in it for you, right? And then a couple things happen. I think, most importantly, it just shifts the context. And when people are coming to a sales call, they automatically have their defensive walls up, right? I'm ready for any attack this salesperson's gonna launch, right? When they're coming to a research interview, they're an open book. They're ready to share what they know. They're ready to share their problems. And obviously the interview is designed to, one, learn the things that we do want to learn about our product and messaging, but two, do discovery, learn what their problems are, learn what the biggest pains are. Why aren't those pains getting solved? What are their biggest opportunities this year? And so through the course of the interview, you've done if you do it right, you've done a fantastic discovery that you can tie into your demo. And when you conclude the call in a very, low pressure way, hey, with the gift card, would it make sense if I sent along, some information? Would it make sense to have another call? Would it make, do you know anyone that should see this? And you can snowball that original $250 investment into a lot more value for you. And our conversion rate's incredibly high. So, I'd say about 40%. Looking at all our data, when we started, doing our outreach like this, it wasn't incredibly well targeted and took any call that would come through, right? Since then, it's become more targeted and the conversion's even higher. But looking at the entire data set, about 40% of those interviews, turn into prospects that take second calls. So it's incredibly powerful, and shifting that mind, it's a shifting of the framing of the call, but it's also a shift in mindset, because as a seller, it's shifting your mindset to learn more and talk less, right? And make an honest assessment about whether you can address their needs, or how aggressively you should follow up based on the information they share. It just provides incredible intel for long sales cycles that require a lot of decision makers.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you're doing LinkedIn outreach. Are you also doing cold email?
Yep.
And is it just those two, or are there other ways that you're trying to reach people in the initial first touch point?
Those are the two main channels we're using. LinkedIn works a little bit better than email, but it really just depends on the contacts, right? So we've had at first email results were really bad, and we almost abandoned it for LinkedIn because you just couldn't compare the results. With a different list of prospects on email, the results got better. Still not as good as LinkedIn, but worth doing. So we're doing both. And I'm sure it would work on other channels too. Just depends on where your audience is, right? Our audience very much is on LinkedIn and email at these big enterprise companies. So if you have a message that's going to, resonate and get a positive reply, then it's just about getting that message into the channel where your prospects already are.
Mm-hmm. With a 1,000% ROI guarantee, you've got to be sitting on some pretty good client success stories. So tell me an eye-watering client success story that has come from this.
I mean, they're all pretty eye-watering. So I think, the initial eye-watering moment was, we ran that original program back when we had the studio. When we started building Incentive Pilot, it was really only to solve all the logistical issues of running these programs, because it's a headache and it's really hard. So once we built all those tools that made managing these programs easier, then the problem became, how do we increase engagement? And we thought about what I already described, which was people love games. People are already on their phones playing games. What if we somehow, weaved what they were doing already into work? And so our very first gamified program was our mystery game called Who Done It. It's like the board game Clue. You do something, you earn cards in the game, or clues in the game, and it helps you solve the mystery. It's very stupid. Instead of a gruesome murder, it's who made the mess in like a 2-bedroom apartment. So there's a hot dog, and instead of Colonel Mustard, you have Commander Condiment, and it's silly. It's tons of fun. We ran that at a large enterprise company, and in a 3-week campaign, we engaged over 60% of their sellers, and the people who participated in the game generated 83% more revenue than the people who didn't participate. And the total revenue that those participants generated was a difference of $69 million in a 3-week campaign. So that was our first eye-watering result, where the ROI is like tens and tens and tens of thousands. It's just insane. And so we started, fine-tuning, adding more games. Most recently we ran a campaign with Atlassian with our Space Invasion game. So you do something and then you earn time to play an old style arcade game. That climbs you up the leaderboard and you get rewarded for the things you do. It's tons of fun. Their very first campaign got an 8,000% ROI. So they paid us for the pilot program and then generated multi-million-dollar returns on engaging partners and getting them to do what they wanted to do. So, and those results are very standard for us. So when you look at 8,000 with Atlassian, over 10,000 with Kensington and Huntress Labs, it's like 1,000% ROI guarantee is actually a low bar for us.
That's that is eye-watering. Say you said 69 million.
Yeah.
And yeah, 8,000% ROI. That's I hope that at least some of your ideal prospects are listening, paying attention.
I hope so
too. When it comes to, I want to hear your advice for other founders, particularly those, I guess, who are in B2B enterprise sales, as far as the importance of your LinkedIn presence and content sharing. That's obviously where I focus. What advice do you have for those founders about how to, I guess, show up on LinkedIn and how important it is?
That's an interesting question, and I wouldn't call myself an expert on that. So, especially related to content, right?
You certainly come across as one when.
I mean, I think
you're not here by accident, Andrew.
All right. Well, I guess in my opinion, especially founders, early stage startups, you're going to get value from everything you do, right? You're probably good enough to get value. The question is that value high enough, tangible enough, and rewards you quick enough, right? Because everybody knows, yes, if you start posting every day on LinkedIn, then in a couple of years, you're going to have a brand and a reputation that's great, right? Well, if you're an early startup, you don't have a couple of years to get that reputation, right? So you're weighing the benefit of LinkedIn versus the benefit of the other things that you're doing. And I think that's a tough balance. I've done 2 different podcast series, one called Sales Games, where I interviewed sales leaders about the games they played with their teams. Another called Enterprise Eyeballs, getting attention at the biggest companies in the world. I learned a lot doing those podcasts. Those podcasts served me very well to be done, clipped up and put on LinkedIn. And it certainly helped me. It certainly helped me. I think in both those cases, the content is the secondary. The content's great to build and foster the brand. That's the long-term thing. But more importantly, it's a way to get introductions and get conversations going that you wouldn't otherwise get, right? So just like a research interview reframes the conversation, a podcast interview reframes the conversation. Hey, you're an expert in your field. I want to talk about you and your experience. Hey, maybe you want to take a look at the product, that, or breaking into networks can be very valuable. So I think, for us at the moment, it's making sure that LinkedIn checks the boxes for our profiles and the message we're sharing. I don't aggressively share content right now. It's like, if I reach out to someone and they check out my profile, do I check the boxes for who they want to see, right? And I think that's it's highly market dependent. I'm working with, folks in the channel space, which is it's a very specific niche. They speak their own language. They do things their own way. It's a very small audience of people for how many billions of dollars of revenue they generate. So my market, might be completely different than someone else targeting other people at enterprise companies. And so I think it really it comes down to your market and understanding where they are, how they interact there, and trying to fit into that. And, it can be really tough to figure that out. Took us a lot of time to get to where we are now. So it takes a lot of experimentation. But I think that you can try anything for 30 days and see how it goes. And I guess the one piece of advice I would say is that, weak good signals can be very dangerous, because you're doing something a lot and you get a good signal that it's working, but it's weak, right? It's not enough to really drive the new revenue you need in the 6 months, or really drive the pipeline you need over the next year. But you keep doing it because it's the only thing that's working, right? And that's where a lot of my mistakes have been made, is like letting go of things that are working but aren't working great. When something starts working great, it's going to smack you over the head like a freight, getting hit by a freight train. And you're going to see the signals and you go, oh my gosh, what was I doing with all this other stuff? This is what I had to do. So I think that's probably a big takeaway I would tell past Andrew is, unless it's great, ditch it and try another experiment, or, keep it going, but experiment with other things until you get better results. Because once everyone knows when something doesn't work, stop doing it, right? But when something's working or kind of working, it can be hard to say there's a better way. And it can give you false feedback, right? When you try a bunch of outreach that doesn't work, all of a sudden I'm questioning product market fit, right? Even though I've run a campaign that made $69 million in 3 weeks, if you email 1,000 people and no one gives a shit, it's really hard to think that maybe there's something to my product, right? So ditching things that that don't work that well, or working poorly in pursuit of something that's going to validate everything else about your business, I think is really important.
All right. Hey, Andrew, final question. If somebody wants to get in touch with you, how can they reach you?
Sure. You hit me up on LinkedIn or send me an email, andrew@incentivepilot.com.
Right on. My guest has been Andrew Phelps, CEO of Incentive Pilot. I really appreciate you making the time today, sir. It's been
thanks for having me. I always love talking and sharing when I can, and I appreciate you having me on.
All right. Thank you very much.